I'm joined by Kit Wofford, partner in the restructuring and bankruptcy group at Ropes & Gray. Hi Kit, and thanks for coming here.
Good morning, Adam.
Kit, there was a lot of talk today about this down cycle in the distressed debt markets. How do you find opportunities in this time of low default rates?
Well, what clients are doing today is there are two areas where we see them focusing. Number one is sectors that have periodic distress, continual chronic distress, like the energy sector and the merchant power sector. You've seen merchant power cases for the last 20 years, and I think the expectation of panelists is that because of the regulatory environment and because of the generally debt-heavy capital structures, you're going to continue to see restructurings in that sector. The second thing that clients are doing is that they are focusing on process and legally oriented opportunities where there is an opportunity through the capital structure to be able to find investment advantage based upon the process.
You mentioned the energy sector, and I know you've done a lot of bankruptcies in this space, and you're currently involved in a major power company bankruptcy. What types of companies do you think will still be under pressure in the power space? Because we've seen natural gas prices going up, coal is becoming competitive.
Well, coal is still a relatively mixed story in that it is not clear from a regulatory perspective whether the government is done adding incremental CapEx requirements. So while you see requirements on sulfur dioxide emissions being addressed today, you see mercury being addressed today, there is still another potential round of regulation associated with water usage and water temperature issues. So frankly, there are many who believe that the government is, got a faction that is generally anti-coal, and that they're going to keep adding layers of regulation and layers of necessary capital expenditure until there's a general decommissioning of many of the coal plants that are out there. Certainly there are coal plants that are scrubbed that have invested huge amounts of CapEx, and those plants are going to be viable at least in the near term, but it's not clear that the regulatory overhang will not continue to affect profitability and viability of other coal facilities.
And you mentioned on the panel about Detroit, you made a reference that despite the sporadic defaults in the municipal markets, we haven't seen that many in the last years. Detroit could still see some challenging times. Can you be more specific and tell us what do you mean exactly?
Well, Detroit is undergoing a transformation. We all know what happened during the auto industry downturn, and while the auto industry in the city somewhat have recovered in terms of the corporate sector, in terms of the municipal sector, they still have huge challenges. That is, there's been a long-term depopulation in Detroit that has left a mismatch between the services that need to be provided, frankly, and the tax base. Until that gets addressed, there's going to be continued pressure on the financial structure in Detroit, and that's why the state and the local government have taken steps to appoint an emergency financial manager and to try to address a potential discussion with its various credit groups, whether those be money borrowed creditors or whether they be the service providers in the form of the municipal unions.